Wait, you're going to sleep in there? I was supposed to be house-sitting with my niece at my elder brother's house while he and his wife were on a trip. As we were joyfully discussing our plans for the following day, my niece reached for the closet door, signaling her intent to go to bed. She slid into the closet without a moment's hesitation, leaving me surprised. When I rushed to grab her arm, she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. I am a 24-year-old housewife named Melissa, and I have a brother who is 5 years older than me. We lost our parents early in life, and having always gotten along, we continued to support each other. That didn't change even after we each got married, and we still maintain close family ties. My in-laws are great, but they live in Alaska, a plane ride away, so we can't rely on them easily. My brother, Sam, and his wife had a shotgun wedding. After clashing with her parents, she has been estranged ever since. With no nearby relatives to rely on, our relationship has been one of mutual support without reserve. It was only strengthened when Sam and his wife had a daughter, and 4 years later, a girl was born to my family as well. The daughters, who lived in the same city, grew up close, almost like real sisters. As the years went by and my niece Sarah was about to turn 10, Sam told me about his plans for a 10th wedding anniversary trip. If it's okay with you, Melissa, could you look after Sarah while we're away? It's just a short overnight trip nearby, but we thought it'd be nice to spend some time alone. I was only too happy to oblige. When we discussed dates and when I asked when I should pick Sarah up, he shook his head as if I didn't understand. It seemed that he wanted me to stay over at his house with Sarah, concerned about leaving the house empty for security reasons. I teased him about being overly worried, but finally gave in. I decided to stay over alone, leaving my daughter, who still has a little anxiety about sleepovers, with my husband. The day of their anniversary trip came as planned, and I went to stay at Sam's house. I held Sarah's hand as we waved goodbye to her parents. She looked a bit uneasy, watching their backs, but our house-sitting adventure was about to begin. I originally planned to bring my daughter over and have my husband pick her up at bedtime, but Sarah adamantly refused, so I gave up. I know she enjoys playing with my daughter, and although she won't tell me why she doesn't want her here today, there must be some reason. So, to cheer up a disappointed Sarah, I promised to take her to my house to play after breakfast the next day, which made her eyes light up. Sarah usually tailors her play with my daughter, so I brought some slightly complex games and puzzles that adults could enjoy as well. As I spread them out, I asked her what she wanted to play with. We spent her time playing games and cooking dinner together, but throughout, Sarah stayed close to me, constantly glancing around nervously. At first, I thought she might be lonely without her parents or still nervous, but her behavior didn't change even after a few hours. So I asked her if something was bothering her. But no matter how many times I asked, she said, "No, it's nothing," and she didn't tell me what was on her mind. Sarah's behavior seemed like she was on guard against something invisible. Only when it was time for me to go to bed did I finally understand what that meant. Sarah changed into her pajamas, opened the door of the closet with a smile, and said that she was going to sleep early today and leave for my house in the morning. In the closet, there was a bed. I couldn't figure out when it had been prepared. As I was trying to grasp the situation, Sarah quickly laid down on the bed and said goodnight while trying to close the door. "Hold on, Sarah, are you going to sleep in there?" I asked, my voice raising with surprise, to which Sarah answered with a serious face. "Yes, but it's okay. I'll leave it open just a little. If I hear anything, I'll wake up right away." Hiding my confusion, I invited Sarah to sleep with me. After some hesitation, Sarah finally agreed and joined me in my bed. She said that she wanted to leave the bed in the closet as a hiding place. I didn't understand why, but I told her it was absolutely fine. As cheerfully as possible, I asked her why she needed a hiding place. After making me promise not to laugh, she whispered, "The monster will come." Just hearing that might make you think she was still a sweet, innocent girl, but the story that followed was enough to make me believe in the existence of this monster. Sarah was shaking, clutching onto my arm. "The monster is really scary and clever. It only comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. If the monster comes, Mommy has to fight it off and I mustn't leave the closet until she does. Mommy always cries while she's fighting. I once tried to help her, but I got so scared when the monster started banging on the closet door." I hugged the trembling Sarah and sighed deeply in my heart. Probably this monster does exist, and it's not some trick to get a child to bed. Discovering my brother's wife's affair in such an unexpected way made me feel lost. If this monster was my sister-in-law's lover, it wouldn't come to this house while she wasn't around. However, Sarah believes that the monster comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. Today, while my brother is away, the evidence is that she stayed close to me all day, guarding the windows and entrance. Considering my kind-hearted niece Sarah and my brother who trusts his wife, I felt a surge of anger towards my sister-in-law. But more than that, I wanted to reassure Sarah right now. I held her hand and smiled at her. "It's okay, Auntie's here today. You said the monster's clever, right? Then it'll be surprised to see a stranger and won't come into the house. And your mommy, who is always targeted by the monster, is with Daddy today, so the monster can't get close to her." Still, Sarah, who does not know the true identity of the monster, keeps her face clouded with anxiety. The more time passes, the more she begins to fear that the monster will attack soon. She suggested we hide in the closet together, so I tried to calm her down by encouraging her to share anything that worries her about the monster. I thought she would eventually get sleepy as I take away her fears one by one. However, when I heard more from Sarah, I knew I couldn't just sit back. Instead of putting her to bed, I immediately took her out of the house without changing her clothes. I rushed home in my own car and explained the situation to my husband and arranged for him and his friends to stay overnight at Sam's house. Around 10 p.m. on the day that my husband and his friends went on their way, I received a phone call from Sam asking about Sarah. "Has Sarah already gone to bed? You shouldn't forget about your husband and daughter once in a while, and have a good sleep. Make sure you lock up the house. Good night." After asking about Sarah, he told me to lock the door before I go to bed. He strongly warned me not to leave the house, and it took all my strength not to let my voice tremble. After ending the call, I looked at Sarah, who was sleeping peacefully with my daughter, and vowed to drive out the monster. The next morning, my husband returned from my brother's house. I trembled with fear and anger at the sight of my husband telling me about the events of the previous night. I was relieved that my judgment the day before had been correct. My family spent the rest of the day at home with Sarah, waiting for my brother and his wife to come pick her up. Upon seeing me, my brother sternly questioned why Sarah and I had left the house at night. "Why didn't you sleep at our house? I asked you many times not to leave the house, didn't I? You said you understood, but what were you thinking when you just went home on your own?" The protest from him, accusing me of breaking my promise, made me feel uncomfortable. I coldly asked him why he, being on a trip, knew that we were not home. Then he replied while avoiding eye contact, "Well, we gave Sarah a smartphone with a GPS function." If that was true, he wouldn't have insisted so much on not leaving the house during the phone call the night before. If he had checked the GPS, he would have easily known that we were not at his house. Suppressing my urge to confront Sam immediately, I continued the conversation quietly so as not to be heard by the kids in the other room. "By the way, 2 unknown men came to your house late last night. Who are they? Why would they come to a house that's supposed to be occupied only by Sarah and me in the middle of the night?" "Suspicious individuals? I'm glad you're safe." His voice was trembling, but it was not from the fear of the suspicious individuals or the relief that his daughter was safe. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, and his gaze was darting around. "Hey, about those guys." I pressed my brother, who was not giving clear answers about who those men might be, but my voice was cut off by my brother's wife, Kate. Whether she was worried about us talking any further, she began calling Sarah forcefully and said they were going home. When Sarah, who had been playing in another room, heard her mother's voice, she came out. Kate pulled her hand away with obvious strength. Then Sam suddenly changed his attitude and said, "I don't forgive you for what happened, but I'm leaving today," and began to push Sarah back to leave the room. My brother and his wife tried to force Sarah to leave with them. When I tried to talk them out of leaving, they ignored me and did not even look back. Seeing Sarah reaching out to me in resistance to her parents, I hastily pulled her towards me. "Hey, what are you doing?" Caught off guard, Kate let go of Sarah's hand and cried out, but I shielded Sarah behind me, putting some distance between us and the couple. They spouted aggressive words, attempting to reclaim their daughter, and stormed towards us in a rage. My husband and I managed to force them out of the room, asserting that we would never allow them to take Sarah away. A police officer who had been waiting at the entrance instantly detained the couple. The police officers were trying to call my brother and his wife, who were totally confused by the unexpected situation. Sam insisted to the officer that we should be the ones apprehended, claiming, "They won't get back my daughter. My sister and her husband took her from our home and are keeping her here. Please rescue her quickly. This isn't the time to hold me down. I won't run or hide, so let me go." Our daughter, who had noticed the commotion and came out, hid behind me and spoke with Sarah in a baffled manner, discussing that she was not looked up at all. Not sure whether Sam heard their conversation, but he sternly told Sarah to come with him. But she was too frightened by her father's intense anger to leave my side. Kate simply stood quietly next to the officer, glancing at my brother as if she had something to say to him and Sarah, but didn't. When my brother, who was causing a scene at the entrance, was completely restrained by the officer, my husband held up his smartphone in front of my brother's eyes. Noticing this, I told Sarah and our daughter to wait again in the previous room and close the doors to keep the sound from leaking. Once my husband confirmed this, he silently started playing a video he had filmed at my brother's house the night before. Upon seeing it, the couple's faces instantly turned pale. The video began with the house key slowly turning and 2 men, apparently using a duplicate key, quietly entering the room. The men, in a good mood from their appearance, greeted my husband and his friends, mentioning my brother's name. "You guys are guests too, huh?" they said. One of them joked, "Hey, how much did you pay? He said I could get a 30% discount because the woman is his own sister, haha." They looked at my husband and his friends with a smirk on their faces. When my husband's friend gave a vague response, avoiding a direct answer, one of them boasted about the specific amount of money. He said that they were good friends with my brother and his wife and that they were able to get a discount from them. They continued, "We're lucky we get to play with the kid today too." And the man's profile as he laughed was hideously villainous, to the point where calling him a monster would be an insult to a monster. I couldn't see the screen from where I was, but the audio alone was enough to give me goosebumps. Afterwards, my husband's friend started grilling the men, asking if they often visited his house and if they always came in pairs. They seemed to notice something was amiss and started asking where Sarah and I were. Upon seeing my husband's angry expression as he stated we weren't there, they seemed to finally realize the situation. Realizing they were not among friends, the men hastily fled. It was unclear whether they hadn't noticed my husband's recording until the end or if they had intentionally not disclosed it. It seems like my brother, who is supposed to be a close friend of them, has never heard of the video before. He is trembling. He desperately insisted he knew nothing and was being framed. Until I watched the video, I thought my brother was innocent and that my sister-in-law had planned everything. But there's clear evidence in the video that my brother Sam handed over to me and little Sarah. No one was convinced by him pretending to know nothing, and he was taken away by the police. Kate was pretending to have no involvement, but the officers who had previously heard from Sarah had many questions for her, so they requested her to come along, and thus Sam and Kate were both taken into custody. Later, during the police investigation, Sam and Kate confessed everything and were arrested on the spot. Apparently, Kate used to invite men over to her house on the nights when Sam was working and received money. Once she realized there was a particular demand for children, she took advantage of Sarah, making sure not to violate the law. To help her mother, who was being bullied by some nasty people, innocent Sarah did as she was told and posed for photos. These were mere pictures of a child with no suggestive connotations whatsoever. Kate would take these innocent photos with a disposable camera, have them developed, and then show them to her clients, instigating a kind of bidding war. Moreover, she would only lend out the photos, never selling them. As much as I despised her for this, if that was all there was to it, it should have ended as a matter of no concern to my husband and me. When Sam noticed Kate's business, he didn't scold her or try to protect their daughter. Instead, he started to gather men who would become their clients. He figured that if he increased the number of employees, the revenue would also increase. With this simple logic, he decided to involve me in his business. Of course I would never agree to this if he simply asked. So he came up with a plan to force me to work and used photos from the scene as a continued threat. Thus, they carefully picked a day when the neighbors were not around and locked me and Sarah in their house. Then they exchanged their house key for a large sum of money and left on a vacation to prove they had nothing to do with what was happening. What Sam and Kate didn't foresee was Sarah, who used to obey Kate's every word, revealed the situation to protect me. Sarah didn't understand most of the conversations happening at home, but she knew that the nasty people were targeting us. She confided in me, and that's when the hellish situation in Sam's house was exposed. That night, after learning about Sarah's situation, I asked my husband to capture the nasty people's activities on camera. Their unguarded information spill helped the police to act immediately after I reported them. At the same time, I made a report to the Child Welfare Services to ensure Sarah's safety. We informed the police about Sam and Kate coming to our house and had them arrested, finally protecting Sarah from the two of them. My brother and sister-in-law, who were arrested on severe charges such as violations of child welfare laws and the laws to prevent prostitution, did not escape imprisonment despite being first-time offenders. The pictures of the child that had been taken and stored over several years were deemed particularly egregious. Once an image is leaked on the internet, it can never be removed completely. I was chilled to the bone when the police told us this, but luckily, because Kate hadn't digitized the photos of Sarah or sold them and had kept them securely stored, we were able to prevent any leaks. I don't understand how my once kind and reliable brother Sam could turn into such a horrific person. We had been helping each other out normally up until then, and it scares me that we had no idea he had become so twisted. Anyway, I hope they will face the reality of what they had done. After the arrest of Sam and Kate, the monsters who were likewise questioned by the police later seemed to argue that they were innocent since it was just an attempted crime. However, the fact that someone's child's photograph was found in their house and that they seemed to be involved in some kind of other crimes confessed by Sam and Kate during the investigation led to their arrest on multiple charges as well. After dealing with the monsters and their associates lurking around us, we then inquired at the Child Protective Services about what would happen with Sarah. With both her parents arrested and no one to care for her, it was decided that Sarah would be taken away from her parents, who were absolutely unfit as guardians. That was a relief, but Sam and I don't have parents, and my sister-in-law's family has cut all ties. We learned that if we can't find someone who's willing to take her in after reaching out to the family of my sister-in-law, she would have to go to a foster care facility. After consulting with my husband, we decided to adopt Sarah. She was, after all, a person I owed a lot to, and I didn't want to part ways with Sarah, whom I adore as if she were my own daughter. Luckily, my husband agreed, and we took this opportunity to move to the countryside where my in-laws live. My daughter was excited to spend more weekends with her beloved grandparents and was overjoyed that her wish for an older sister came true with the arrival of Sarah, whom she adores. Finally freed from her parents, Sarah, with her remarkable adaptability as a child, is already getting used to her new environment as an older sister and is starting to live a peaceful and happy life.